to the MD Gardener. Today we're going to talk about starting seed. It's winter still here in Germany and spring is on the way. It's the beginning of March and it's the time to start thinking about what do you want to do in your garden? What do you want to plant? Now, many people are happy to buy plants from some kind of nursery. There's nothing wrong with that. But it does cost more. A much cheaper alternative is to start your plants from seed. And I'm going to show you what I like to do. Some of the things you might need is a seed starting tray like this. This has 12 cells with little holes at the bottom. There are bigger ones, of course. The reason I use these ones is I do all of my seed starting indoors in the house, and they get put on the windowsill or on the heater, like here. This is important for the germination. So you want to have a consistent temperature at the very beginning. Once they've come up, doesn't necessarily need to be on the heater anymore. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't put it on the heater. Instead, near a windowsill. And there are two sort of schools of thought here. Some plants need to be started quite early. So, for example, I have here my peppers. These I planted the 1st of February, so they've been growing for a month. And there's some good growth, they're getting bigger. Now these can't go outside until the middle of May. Depends on where you live, of course, but in Germany, it's about the middle of May before you can guarantee that there won't be any frost. And frost is the killer of certain plants, for example, peppers. They are not cold hardy at all. And although they're nice and happy in this seed tray for now, they will need to be up-potted. And up-potting means you take the plant out of the cell and put them in a pot like this. I'm only using these smaller pots for my peppers because their final home will be outside in the garden. However, if you plan to grow your peppers in pots the entire season, whether you keep it indoors or on a porch or your balcony, when they're about this stage, even you can wait longer. Really, it's about the amount of nutrients in the soil and the space for the roots to grow. You can pot them up in its final pot. Basically, peppers don't really like to be transplanted. These will be transplanted twice, once in these pots and then finally in the ground. If you do it unnecessarily, that has the risk of hurting the growth of the plant, really. So if you plan to grow in a pot, then from this seed cell to the bigger pot is what I would recommend. The other idea is, here I have my peas. Now, peas can handle the cold. And as you see here, it's got a lot of good growth. They're ready to go out. I've checked the weather forecast and this week we'll get temperatures as low as -6. And that's a little bit too cold for peas. It might work, but you have to put them under cover, and you can see the amount I have here. I don't really want to do that, although I could. So I'm gonna wait one more week and then they will go out in the garden already. And when you're thinking about what seeds to start, pay attention to, for example, the packet or the variety. In the ideal world, you start your seeds in these cells. And when they've been growing for 2 to 3 weeks, they are ready to go outside. And so now that it's early spring, the kind of things you want to be planting are things that can handle potential frost. And you have to sort of pay attention to, for example, your seed packet. But as I said before, the peppers, they don't like frost. They will be potted up. But these ones don't need to be potted up. That's very unnecessary. These will go outside within a week and they can start growing. This is also true with things like lettuce, and even cabbage and spinach and these sort of potential, the potential for frost is still there. If you put out a zucchini plant, I did last year, they won't make it. We even had the mistake, it was April, it was really warm, I couldn't wait anymore, I had no more patience, and I put out my zucchinis. And sure enough, in the second week of May, we had a frost, had freezing temperatures. I didn't pay attention to the weather and I forgot to cover the plant and well, it died. And I had to start from scratch. And although that's fine, the whole point of this is to get a head start. I like growing and starting my seeds in cells because I can control the environment. I have a dome that goes over the seed cell, and this prevents the soil from dehydrating, and it keeps a consistent moisture, and I also have consistent temperature. And this is solely to make sure that everything germinates. After that, the hood comes off and it grows in the windowsill till it's ready to go outside. You can direct sow, of course. There's nothing wrong with that. In many plants like carrots, you always direct sow. But basically, because we have winter here, this gives me a head start, and then as soon as the weather is right, I can have plants having already been started. The same is, for example, with my peppers. There's nothing wrong with starting them in May, directly into the ground, but they have a really long growing season, and if you have winter, you wouldn't really get pepper results until, if you plant them in May, till November maybe, and then they wouldn't really produce much. This is why we start them so early, so that you have a good chance of harvest. Anyways, today I'm going to be planting tomatoes in these cells. Tomatoes are like peppers, they definitely do not like frost, which means it's about 2.5 months until, that sounds a long time away, until I can plant them outside, which means these little cells will not do for the long term. They will be up potted. As you can see, there are 12 cells. I plan to put 2 seeds per cell. That's 24 plants, which means you need 24 pots. So you don't need to plant your tomato seeds this early, but again, it's about getting a head start. So I'll just quickly show you what I usually do. We're indoors. I have really basic, here this says flower compost. It doesn't really need to be anything special. I know that a lot of people prefer, I'm just gonna do this, prefer putting special seed starting compost, and there's a lot of maybe even debate on how you're supposed to do that. I've never paid attention to that, and I've never had any problems, because this is not their final resting place. Outside is where it really matters. So what I do, I first put a good amount on here, and then I gently compact the compost. This won't really hurt the seeds. It's still loose soil, but compacting makes it easier to remove it from the cells, because that's ultimately what you want to do. And so can compact it like this. Not too hard. You don't want to break the cell, and this is not hardcore plastic. I mean, if you have something like that, well then it doesn't matter, but in this case, it's not the highest quality plastic. So, what you'll then want is a label of some kind. You might have the best memory in the world, but you're gonna forget. I always do. In this particular case, I have 12 cells and I'm growing 12 different varieties of tomato. And I would call it quite impractical to put 12 different labels. You can do it, of course, but I prefer to draw it on paper, and I put a label at one corner so I can remember the direction of where everything is compared to my paper. So just take a marker, write tomato, and then I have my diagram here, which already has the seeds laid out and labeled for the variety. And then it's a really simple process. You just drop the seeds into the corresponding cell. In the case of tomatoes, I am multi-sowing. This is, again, only for the advantage of the germination. Because I can control the environment with my seed starting cells, I have a better chance of germination. It's also something like an insurance. If we can't guarantee that every seed will germinate. And so by putting in 2, it increases my chances, and I'm not heartbroken if not everything comes up. If everything comes up, it's also not a problem. It's really easy to separate or split the seedlings once they've come up when you're ready to up pot. The longer you wait, the more difficult it is. It's still possible, as I've shown in my other video, splitting peppers. I waited way too long. It still works. It still worked without any problem, but it's a bit more effort to separate them. When they're young seedlings, it's really no risk, I would say. And that's what I plan to do here, is anything that's doubled, I will separate them and put them in their own pot. And I'm not sure yet if I will grow if they all come up. That's 24 tomato plants. That's quite a lot of space to use in the garden. I'm not really sure if I will keep them for myself. There's a good chance I'll pass them on to friends, which is totally a good thing to do. So I've got my seeds just planted happily on the compacted compost. And then I come in with a light covering. Here I don't compact it. I just let it sit over top. Now, you have to pay attention to the kind of seeds that you're planting. Some require more depth, more cover. Some not much. So here, 0.5 centimeter to a centimeter is more than okay for the tomatoes. Just like this. And the final step here is watering. So let's go ahead and have a look at the watering. When watering your tomato, or when your cells really, it's pretty straightforward. You want the soil to be wet. So I sort of do 1, 2, 3. This is now relatively soaked. Again, it's all about creating a great environment for the seeds, and therefore we need moisture. The final step is placing it near a window. So finally we have our watered, labeled tomatoes. I put on my greenhouse dome, and it can sit near a sunny window, like so. And patience is the final step. It needs 1 to 2 weeks for germination. Once everything starts to pop up, you can remove this greenhouse dome because the light and the warmth from the window is enough. You also don't want your seedlings to get leggy, which is where they sort of jump up too high. Something like has happened here actually with my kohlrabi. Sometimes they like to do that. That's one of the risks of growing indoors. However, everything should still be fine. So that's all for now. Good luck with starting your seeds. Don't be afraid to do so. You'll save a lot of money in the long term. Of course, if you just prefer to buy already started plants, this is, especially if you're a beginner, there's nothing wrong with doing this. It's the fastest way, almost guaranteed that you'll have success. But if you plan on growing a lot of plants, seed is really the way to go. So, thank you, and we'll speak to you another time.